Great to be outside, I think, on the first day of proper summer. We've got some sunshine here in Brighton in the south coast of the UK, and it's a really privilege to have Carl. Great to have you with us this afternoon, Carl. Carl is really one of the founding fathers of the Vineyard, which is the church grouping that I belong to. And Carl, one of the questions I'm kind of desperate to ask you is what it must have been like in the late 70s, early 80s, in a community, I suppose, not a million miles different from Brighton, very eclectic, a seaside kind of community, and seeing, I guess, hundreds of converts come into the church, and you really being at the very epicenter of almost everything that God was doing. What was that like? What did it feel like?
Well, it was fun. It was like fishing in a barrel, you know.
Yeah.
It was a whole different season, a whole different time. I think what we face now in our Western culture, it's not just eclectic, but it's pluralistic, and there's, not just the multi-racial, but the multi-dimensional, aspects of faith and relativism as it relates to that. It wasn't that kind of a season back then. Plus, it was sovereign. It was just ridiculous. You'd come to places like Brighton, and there'd be people walking along and sharing Christ, and people responding. There'd be people opening up a room and saying, "Hey, why don't you guys come in and have a Coke?" And then they share the gospel, and 50 people would come to Christ. And it was just, the wind was blowing. And so for us, it was just hoisting up the sails. I remember I could just literally at any time walk up to any group of people and share Christ, and there was an openness to it. So obviously there was a lot of God's grace on it. It was, I almost feel guilty. I almost feel guilty of being a part, because.
Well, we feel jealous that you were a part.
Yeah. Well, it was so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't imagine. I mentioned to you in a private conversation earlier that it was people just running to get into church.
Yeah.
Where do you see that? So it was a different vibe, a different time.
And maybe, so you're leading people, hundreds and hundreds of converts then coming into the church for the first time.
Right.
Did you have any systems in place? Do you have courses? What do you do with all these people?
Well, eventually you do. Our approach was to let things grow, and let things take place, not interfere with that growth, and just really kind of fan the flame.
Yeah.
And then in due course, begin to give some shape to it. Begin to and try to do it gently, because you don't want to interfere with what's going on to a degree. Because first of all, you can't control what's going on.
Yeah.
It's happening. You don't really know why it's happening. And in our particular case, people started coming from all over and asking us, "Well, what are you doing? How are you doing this?"
Yeah.
And to be honest, we started answering even though we didn't have the answers. But eventually, the main thing we organized people in was small groups. And they became mini churches. And they had all the same characteristics that church had. So they had worship, they had teaching, they had ministry time, and then people were sent. That was a big deal. People were always sent. People were always on mission. We hear now the buzzword missional.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
And that'll change in a couple more years. But it just means to be sent. So John Wimber, who was the founder of the Vineyard movement, always said, we gathered to scatter.
Yeah.
And so we always gathered with a purpose, and there was empowering that took place, there was encouragement and ministry, the practice of the gifts was vital and robust, and then people were sent and encouraged to do it like in their neighborhoods, in the marketplace, at school, and they did.
So here we are trying to establish churches in Brighton. Do you think there's anything, I'm a pastor, is there anything that we can do to replicate that, to make that happen, or do we just? What is it? What can we do to?
Well, I think one of the most important things that could possibly happen is if you could possibly convince those people that you've gathered, who say they want to follow Jesus, to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I personally see pastors spending a lot of time and energy trying to convince people to do the thing they said they've already decided to do. But their attention is diverted 10 different ways. And that's part of life. You have to deal with that. But getting people to be devoted followers of Jesus who replicate his attitude, who replicate his behavior. Jesus attracted sinners.
Yeah.
We read through the scriptures, sinners always gathered around Jesus. He did not repel them. Church people sometimes repel people because we talk too much and do too little.
Yeah.
And so if we could get our people to think incarnationally, to think about, a term that I stole from a priest named Daniel Grudy, to make visible the invisible heart of God. Because that's what Jesus did. And you see him do that with the woman at the well. You see him do that with the woman caught in adultery. You see him do that with Zacchaeus. You see him do it in the stories that he shared and told. He just exemplified the heart of God. And people were drawn to that. So I think evangelism and discipleship are absolutely essential. Those are the old, ancient wells that have to be reopened. We don't need more programs.
Yeah.
We don't need more bells and whistles. We need more devoted followers of Jesus.
I totally agree. So really what you're saying is we need to get hungry for God, we need to spend time with God, we need to be expectant of God to do these wonderful things, and maybe possibly just we're not cooperating with him enough, actually. We're not believing with him enough. We're not excited enough about the kind of things that he does.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I don't think it's complex. I think it's simple.
Yeah.
And I think we need to bring people back. Now, we have to do all of what you just said while not becoming religious.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
That is hard.
We become religious.
Yeah,
we begin to size people up. We want people to change. But I think we just have to worry about bringing people to Christ and letting Christ transform and change people.
Yeah. And would you say at the very heart of, again, it's the group, the church grouping that we kind of belong to. That was the heart of the Vineyard in the beginning. You think that was the very heart of what you were trying to promulgate when you came to the UK? It's just let more of him, try and follow him. No programs, no methodology. It's what is the Spirit saying? Would that be?
I think that would be to a degree, although John had organized his thinking by that time.
Yeah.
So he did, but I think the essence of it is that God, the Holy Spirit, wanted his church back.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to be the administrator of the church, and that we're to be his vessels, and we're to follow him and follow his lead. And then we're to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. We're to give it away. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think John did when he first came here in the most remarkable way. From the very opening session, when he had them close their notebooks, he said, "Now let's do it."
Yeah.
And he taught them how to do it. And they went away knowing how to do it and how to teach others to do it. And that was John's genius and his brilliance.
Yeah, that's what hooked me, definitely. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, he didn't need to do it all.
And maybe just to highlight a couple of stories from that time of people, coming in that you personally encountered, or maybe a meeting that was just overwhelming to you, really, life transforming towards you and towards people coming in, people whose lives were just being transformed by Jesus in your midst. That, again, what a privilege to lead worship and to see God do these things.
Absolute privilege. There's so many things. It's alarming. I've just been back here in the UK for the first time in 15 years, and I've run into numerous people. I was going to say young people, but they're not so young anymore.
We're all getting older.
Yeah, but they were touched 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 19, and their lives put on a whole different course. Somebody headed down one road, all of a sudden now their whole life has been changed and transformed. Yeah. I interacted with one lady on Facebook who was at Westminster Central Hall 25 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember one meeting, we had worship, and then there was kind of a quiet time, and there was a shriek, a blood-curdling scream that made my skin crawl. It scared me, half to death. And, I didn't know what happened. We just kind of went on with the meeting. Well, I got a message from her about a year ago on Facebook that at that point that God sovereignly delivered her and set her free. And this last 25 years, she's been leading worship and home groups and engaged in the work of the kingdom. And I know pastors that were there that got touched and it changed the whole direction of their life. People that were in business that are now church planters, Nikki Gumbel, Mike Pilavachi, these people who just got hammered by God, and God just changed the course of their life.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, to me, in essence, that's what brought me in completely, and just the desire to see more lives changed, and stuff like that. I think as well, in our context today, and desiring for more of this, and seeing some of this, and of course we all want to desire more. What does it feel like coming back? I mean, and I'm talking about just personally inside. What does it, after 15 years away from the UK, you're coming back, you're hearing stories from church, and be honest, there's good things, aren't there? And there's also some maybe things not quite the way that perhaps we'd like it to be. But what would you say?
Well, I think what's happening here is reflective of what's happening within the Western world. We are catching up with you in the States in terms of apathy and lack of involvement. Our churches are closing their doors weekly and in a rapid, frightening pace. Young people are not coming to Christ, and people are not being discipled. And that's happening here, and you guys have seen that for years. Obviously that's disturbing. But the truth is, it feels really good to be here, and it feels really good to see a church here. To come to Brighton, where we used to go be down the street here and do conferences, and now there's a Vineyard church here, and I don't think Vineyard existed in the UK at that time, and so and to go to Oxford, and there to be a vital work there, and to go to Sutton, and then I went to a Baptist church, which might as well been a Vineyard conference. It was the evening was so incredible with the worship and the ministry time, and it's just the expectation, and there does seem to be in many groups an expectation and building, and it doesn't matter whether it's with the New Wine Crew, and I don't know all the right names and titles, sorry, or the Bethel influence here, or the Vineyard, or New Frontiers. In all of those groups, there seems to be an anticipation of something happening, something changing, and hopefully it's going to be a revolution, not a revival. I hope so. Not a revival, not renewal, but a revolution, because a revolution topples governments and changes cultures. And I think that's what's needed. Is Jesus needs to get back on the throne, right? Absolutely. So that's what I would hope for. But I frankly, I love it here, and I love being back.
I think you're right. I think there's certainly denominational walls are really cut down. If you go to many of the festivals today, you could be Catholic, Anglican, you could be from a plethora of different. It doesn't matter today. It's, do you love Jesus? So you chasing after Jesus is really the heart of what matters. And maybe, Carl, as well, if anyone's strayed into this to watch this, but you're not a Christian. You could be in crisis. You could be in addiction. You're just desperate. Maybe. You're just seeking. You're honestly wondering, why do these people go to church? Why do they do this on a Sunday? And I guess in our culture, being so old, so many churches really, it feels to so many people that it's just cultural, and that it's boring, and they're good people that do it, and God bless them, but that isn't for me. How do we change that? What would you say to those kinds of people? Because we want those kinds of people to look again at Christ. We want them to feel that they can come into our churches and know nothing. We want them to know they can come as they are. We don't care how they're living, or what they're doing, or what they're addicted to, or what their sexuality is. We just want them to be able to come. What would you say to
I'd say what you just said. I would say what you just said, and then I'd try to do it. I'd try to do it. And the way you do it is one person at a time. It's one neighbor at a time. It's one life at a time. It really is. I know that's cliche-ish, but it is. We can only affect people one person at a time. So what I would tell unchurched, non-Christian people is please look at Jesus. Just read what Jesus said. Watch and see what Jesus did. Because the Bible says that Jesus was the manifestation of the Father, that he makes the Father known to us. One translation says that no one's seen the Father except for the Son, but the Son explains him to us. And so Jesus, in the way that he acted and the attitude that he had and the compassion he demonstrated, the concern, the power he yielded, he was the perfect representation of the Father. So if you want to know what God's like, look at Jesus. Don't look at the church, because that's not going to tell you what God's like. That's a man thing that we've kind of messed with that, and we keep trying to fix it. We want to. We're honest about it, but we're really about trying to be followers of Jesus and doing the things that Jesus did, and saying the things that Jesus said, and acting the way Jesus acted. So we want to pray for the sick. We want to see people healed. We want to cast out demons. We want to minister to the poor. We want to have compassion for those who are lost and wandering. We want to embrace the prostitute, So that's what we should be, and if we're not, you have every right to challenge us, because we're supposed to be followers and examples of Jesus. And the church is supposed to be a representation of people who love him and have gathered together in celebration of him. And so that's what one of my prayers for you and your church and every church I go to is that there would be a day that Sunday morning would not be the most important day of the life of the church. That what happens Monday through Saturday, all during the week, out in the community, would be the most important thing. And when you get together on Sunday, it would be an explosion of celebration of all the great things that God's doing.
Yeah. And I think as well, we're a pretty screwed up lot, really. We try and hide it, don't we? We do, but we're all pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And again, your story is so great, Carl, because you're 11 years old, and you're a street kid. I mean, I maybe say what that was like, because again, I think people need to know we are just ordinary people, and our lives have been just sidetracked by Jesus. Jesus has done something real in our life, and it's right. Jesus that's done it. And he did it to you when you were just an 11-year-old snotty kid, I guess. But maybe describe what your life was like, because maybe that'll help people.
When you look at where I am today, people wouldn't imagine how off course I was. Even as an 11-year-old boy, that seems so young, but I was grown up in a family where my mother and father they're just not healthy people, and there was a lot of violence and a lot of anger. So my dad was gone by the time I was 7, and so my mom had to work all the time. So I just hit the streets, hung out with these big Samoan guys that kind of protected me. And
this is Southern California, right?
Southern California. I was exposed to things that an 11-year-old shouldn't have been, or what 10 or 8 or 9-year-olds shouldn't have been exposed to, and experienced things I shouldn't have been experienced. And the course of my life really was one of, headed towards certain death. I mean, the things I would have been involved in would have killed me, or somebody would have killed me.
Yeah.
And but Jesus kind of snatched me out of the midst of that, and all I did is somehow, some way said yes to him coming into my life. I didn't say any particular prayer. I didn't know exactly even what to do. I just knew I needed life. I didn't have life, and life was in Jesus. So I asked him to come into my life. Totally changed the course of my life.
And that's all you did? You just said, Jesus, come into my life. That was it?
That's all I did, and it was enough to change me to the extent that my mom sold our house and moved us to be where the church I was going to was.
And people might find that shocking in our culture, that to come to this you didn't actually do anything. I mean, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't try and be a better person, or you didn't try and give up the stuff first. You just said, Jesus, come into my life.
I just knew I needed him. I knew I needed a Savior. And it's funny, I was at a meeting, a friend of mine has a ministry that's kind of in a location like Brighton, and they just have a storefront. And they just keep it open all the time, and people wander in, and they have meetings sometimes. And there was a meeting one night, and I happened to be there, and this drunk guy came in, and he sat down next to me, and he was, really, really drunk. And he asked me to sing him a song, and I said, nah, I don't think so. But he said, then he leans over to me, and says, I'm so messed up. I'm just so messed up. I said, I'll tell you what, look around this room. Look at all these people. And I'll tell you something, they're messed up. theirs just isn't showing like yours is right now.
Yeah.
That's the only difference between us and you, bro.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between us. Not that Jesus doesn't change lives and doesn't teach us to say no to things that destroy life. But you know what's funny is the Scriptures talks a lot more about what to do than what not to do.
Yeah.
And we seem to get off on the what not to do stuff, but there's much more about what we're called to do and be. And when we're busy doing that, you kind of stop doing the not
stuff. Yeah.
not do stuff.
It's
you know
true.
what I mean?
It's true. Yeah. We do the other stuff when we're not doing what we're meant to do. That's for sure.
That's right.
Carl, it's thank you so much. Thank you for coming. It's a privilege to have you here, and it's great to welcome you back to Brighton, and particularly on a sunny day, and to hear your story. And thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Bless you.